If your home has been damaged by a storm, you may be wondering what to do next. Navigating the insurance claims process can be challenging and overwhelming, especially when dealing with the aftermath of a storm. There are many different types of storm damage, including rain, wind, hail, and flood, and each one can have its own unique set of challenges. This leaves policyholders with many questions from what is covered to how can they best prepare to navigate the claims process. This webinar will examine how to navigate the insurance claims process when dealing with damages caused by a storm. My name is Jess McCracken. I'm the Whole Community Readiness Coordinator for Pinellas County Emergency Management and your moderator for this webinar. We encourage you to submit your questions throughout the program by utilizing the Q&A feature found on the Zoom toolbar and have scheduled time at the end of the program to address your questions. Now I would like to introduce our panelists. Joining us today, we have Greg Thomas, Director of Insurance Agent and Agency Services and Consumer Services with the Department of Financial Services under Chief Financial Officer Jimmy Petronis. Ashley Tharp, a Corporate Agent Training Manager with Wright Flood Insurance, specializing in the National Flood Insurance Program. Barry Scarr, the Vice President of Acentria Insurance Agency and a Community Insurance and Risk Management Specialist, specializing in condominium and homeowner association insurance. And Lisa Foster, a certified floodplain manager with over 15 years experience in watershed and floodplain management planning and education, and the floodplain administrator for Pinellas County. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we discuss the insurance claims process and how to navigate that, let's begin by discussing the insurance policies that respond to damages we typically see when talking about storms. Barry, with property insurance, what types of policies are available and what are the coverages offered on those policies?
So thank you, Jess. So the first primary policy, of course, is the HO3 or the homeowner policy for a single family dwelling in Florida. So that's when you're in a single family dwelling, you're going to buy that HO3. It's going to provide dwelling coverage, the amount of the replacement cost of the house, not the real estate value, but the replacement cost. And you're going to be included with contents coverage. So you have the building coverage. You have items in the house that are not attached to the building, to the home. And that's the furniture and the content and stuff that moves. And of course, we're also going to have and let me explain that the main coverages we're concerned about, of course, is wind, hurricane, lightning, and fire, those types of coverages. And also you wanted, so the single family home. The other most common policy is the HO6 for condominium homeowners. So that'll be coverage for your condo, and it's based on certain dwelling coverages also, but that the statute says you are responsible for covering wall, floor, ceiling coverings, built-in appliances, etc. And also your contents, right? Very important coverage in the HO6. It's unique to condos is the loss assessment endorsement, which is very, very important. That's why we encourage owners to get the HO6, to get that coverage, because the association is going to get hit with a large hurricane deductible, and they're going to turn around and assess the owners for that after the storm. And your HO6 policy will cover up to $2,500 with only a $250 deductible. So that's very important coverage, and it's unique to condos. The other policy is the HO4 for renters, a tenant policy. So if you don't own the property and you're renting, whether it's a condo or a single family home, you're going to use the HO4 to protect your contents.
Great, thanks so much, Barry. So Ashley, let's jump into flood insurance. So what defines a flood, and are flood losses covered on these homeowner property policies that Barry was just going over with us?
Thank you, Jess. So the NFIP does have a specialized policy specifically to cover the building and contents for flood damage. These are separate policies from a homeowner's policy to So if specific flood damage would typically not be included onto the homeowner's policy unless there was a specific rider with that particular policy. There are also options through non-NFIP that are direct for specifically to flood as well. I'm mainly here to answer questions about NFIP flood insurance. There are 3 main policy types. There is your regular dwelling policy, which is for your 1 to 4 family homes and your condo units. You have a condo association policy type, which is specifically for the residential condominium associations. And then you have a policy type for your apartment buildings that have 5 or more residential units that are for those owners of the apartments. And you have a business policies. So those are the general property forms. And so those will cover the businesses. So they do provide that flood coverage, again, for just building and contents, but they don't have additional parts to that like your homeowner's policy would.
So a question we get a lot, and I would like to hear from you, is damage from storm surge covered? Is that considered flood damage, and which policy responds?
So the definition of a flood is really an important part here because flood damage is overflow of inland or tidal waters that is general and temporary condition of partial complete inundation. And it has to affect 2 or more properties or 2 or more acres, keeping in mind the street is property. It's a property owned by the community. So if you have just your building getting a flood damage from this tidal flow of water, and storm surge would be included in that type of tidal flow of water, then that would be a flood, and you want to definitely take a picture of the street and that flood street to make sure that it does qualify for the 2 properties. For the storm we just had, there are a lot of properties out there, so it's really not hard to find the second property in those scenarios.
Okay, great. Greg, we had a lot of vehicles that were damaged with Hurricane Idalia from flood waters and storm surge waters. What policy covers that?
It's going to be your automobile insurance policy. Automobiles are not covered under your homeowner's insurance contract. It's going to be covered under your auto policy if you have comprehensive coverage. So automobile policies under state law, you've got some basic requirements: personal injury protection and property damage liability. Most policies are also going to have bodily injury liability, but they don't all have comprehensive and collision coverage. Comprehensive and collision are actually coverages for damages to your personal vehicle. Collision coverage is just what it means. That means that you're involved in an accident and there's damage to your vehicle and it's your fault, or the other party doesn't have insurance or whatever. You can file a claim on your own insurance, and your insurer will pay to repair your vehicle or replace it if it's damaged. That's the piece that's collision. The other side of the equation is other than collision or comprehensive. So it goes by both names, and that pretty much covers everything else. So if your vehicle's flooded due to a hurricane, that will be covered under the comprehensive coverage. Or if your vehicle, a tree limb or a tree fell on your vehicle during the storm, it would also be covered under the comprehensive coverage. There's a deductible specific to that in your policy. And if you have that coverage, your agent should know that, your adjuster should as well, but it should be in the policy declarations page that you have with your insurance policy. Things to know about that coverage are that when it comes time to pay the loss on your vehicle, if the damage, let's say it's a tree limb that fell on the car and it can potentially be repaired, well, the insurer is going to pay the cost to repair the vehicle less your deductible. But now let's assume for a moment that the vehicle was flooded. If the vehicle was flooded with salt or brackish water, it's almost a guarantee that the vehicle will be a total loss. Freshwater, not always, but in most cases also going to be a total loss. But they would look at it. The statute on total losses says that if the vehicle is damaged more than 80% of the value, it's considered a total loss. So saltwater inundation, they're going to say automatically, because the electronics were inundated with salt water, it sort of fries everything over the course of time, and the car is going to be total. When it comes to valuation, they're going to use what's called an actual cash value valuation, which means that they're going to pay you what it costs to replace your vehicle with a similar vehicle with similar age, mileage, etc.
Great, thanks so much. So when properly documenting damage, anytime your property suffers damage from a storm, it's essential to properly document the extent of that damage for your insurance claim. Lisa, can we talk a little bit about how homeowners can properly document damage to their home and what information needs to be collected, and why is that so important that we collect and report that properly?
So I'm going to go back to something Ashley actually mentioned. She noted that with these NFIP policies, there's a contents policy and then the building policy. So it's separate coverages. So your renters might only have, for example, the contents, and then your homeowners that are living in their homes, maybe they have both. So you need to document with photo evidence both of these things. So as the walls are being removed, this flood resulted in, anywhere from a couple of inches up to a foot or so on average across the county, depending on where you were. So that means your walls are going to be getting cut out a few feet up from your floor. So as you're cutting those walls out, removing them, make sure you take pictures. I'm talking all the way down to the insulation. And you need to do pictures in every single room. And speaking of by room, for your contents claim, you're going to want to document everything you had by room. So bedroom 1, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, kitchen, living room, dining room. So every single room is going to have a separate list, and make sure that you have all your photos filed that way. So the best recommendation I have for you is to set up files on your computer and just take your photos and make sure that you put it room by room, name it, dining room table, name it, kitchen stools, whatever they are, whatever the item is, just name it so that it's easy to find. And then for the building piece of it, make sure that you say dining room walls and you have that photo that shows, whatever wall covering you had, the drywall, the insulation, all the different pieces. Document. You cannot have enough photos to show those adjusters what you had, because you need to get that wet stuff out so you don't get mold. So it's critical that you got that. Hopefully everybody's already had their walls removed, right? So after the storm, because we're already, past a couple weeks out. So when you are taking things out, when this happens again, which, I'm a floodplain manager, I'm going to guess this is going to happen again. So next time this happens, if you did not do this time around, please make sure you photograph everything. So as you are removing walls, as you are removing wet items and bagging them to be disposed of, make sure that you are photographing, taking videos of everything. And then if you miss something in a photograph, you can go back to those videos and do a still screen of it to show that it was there. And if you've got larger items like your refrigerator and things like that, make sure you're documenting serial numbers before you get rid of things, and take pictures of the serial numbers. You cannot possibly document it enough. And you want to make sure you organize it room by room. On our website, Pinellas.gov, if you go to the flooding page, we actually have a link over to the sample sheet where you can document your things room by room. If you don't want to download that, it's fine. You just want to put down what the description of the item is. Well, first thing is, what room is it in? What's the description of the item? What's your estimated replacement cost value? If you've got, a receipt or a link to that product somewhere else where you can purchase it, put that in there in the spreadsheet. The more information you can provide to the insurance adjuster, the better. Help them help you.
Absolutely, great advice. So now we're talking about effectively managing the claims process, so we know which policy is responding. We have all of our documentation. Barry, let's talk about the claims process for the property and homeowner policies that you were talking about earlier.
Sure. So, and we're going to use the example of a wind because we're talking storm here and hurricane. And so that's where you're probably going to, have the claim. I would like to make a side note that so this past a year ago, Hurricane Ian, came in as a Cat 4 or 5, tremendous storm surge, but also wind. So both policies, if you have a home and the homeowners and a flood, you're covered, and both of them are going to pay to some degree or another. They're both going to pay, depending on the type of damage and so forth. The problem came with about 25% of the insureds did not carry flood insurance. So it was very obvious in the homeowner policy to the adjuster that the the flood mark in the interior of the house was, 4 or 5 feet up on the wall. And they're trying to get the homeowner policy to pick that up. And they're not going to cover that. But there is, there's probably some wiggle room. I call it the Morgan and Morgan factor. So we have plaintiff attorneys and public adjusters that are all over this. There's some room there, but to be safe, you need both policies, and it's becoming more important to do that. But let's say we're making a homeowner claim for wind. Most of the carriers will want you to file the claim directly to them. Okay, so in your homeowner policy, the carrier's claims number is part of the policy, but they really want that direct now, so they get to talk to you and link up with the policyholder and get all of the information at once without it going through your agent necessarily. Now, it's important that you utilize your agents. Yeah, I'm an agent, and we are your advocate. The policyholder's advocate. So we need to know what's going on. We want to know. But in most cases right now, they want to hear directly from the insured what the damage is and get that relationship going right away. So that's probably going to be the norm when you're filing a homeowner claim, especially if it's involving a big storm where a lot of claims are going to be coming in, or it's on the weekend or at night and you can't call the agency anyway. So it's good to be aware of that. If you don't know the number, obviously call your agent, bring them in. It's very important to have that relationship and understand, that you've filed the claim, but now we need to make sure and do the proper follow-up. And that's really important for that relationship to have with the agency after you have filed the claim. And of course, in the flood, as Ashley will explain, with the adjuster and how they're going to be dealing with that also. So very important, get that homeowner wind claim going. If you're in a condominium, the association will have filed a claim for the damage to the building. You're going to be concerned about damage within your unit. If there was water damage, if there was, we had a lot of wind-driven rain damage in Ada in November of 20, because that was a big windstorm also. With Idalia, there just really wasn't much wind. That storm has been pretty cut and dry. You either have flood insurance or you don't, because there wasn't I'm not aware of any wind claims that resulted from that storm. It was flood, and unfortunately we had some fires as a result of that. But so yes, you're going to file your homeowner claim, and you're going to talk to your homeowner carrier directly and get that wind damage claim moving. Oh, and also, as Lisa said, you can't take enough pictures. The photos are huge. They definitely like before and after. So they want to see what everything looked like before, especially on your roof. Would be helpful to take pictures now of the roof before we have the occurrence, and then the pictures of the damage afterwards. That's really helps them ascertain your claim better and process it.
And one thing I forgot to mention too on that note, Barry, is to take samples, a sample of a curtain, a sample of a carpet,
Yes.
just a little small sample of the things that you can get samples of before you throw it away.
Yep, exactly. Well, that's very helpful.
I was going to add that too, Lisa.
Good.
So Ashley, let's jump right to you. What does the claims process look like from the flood perspective?
So definitely calling in your claim, getting your adjuster assigned, allowing them to come in and inspect the property to answer your questions, your initial questions. Claims adjusters, if you have any kind of questions for your adjuster, they can provide you a summary of the information and what is included on your policy. They can answer any of your questions about how the policy is going to be handled, this process, and the claims adjuster is going to be the person that's going to really walk you through this whole process. If you have any discomfort or problems, you can always reach out to the company to talk to them about what's happening. They are very open to hearing what's going on and to getting in touch with you and helping you through the process as well. To us, one of the most important things is the proof of loss. Once there is a limit, there's sometimes limited timelines on getting certain information and certain documentation into the claims adjuster. And if we don't have that information, they're not able to move forward with the claim. And that's the last thing we ever want happening. We definitely want your claim to be handled, and we want it to be handled quickly and effectively and as efficiently as we possibly can. So when you have a situation happening and you're disagreeing with your adjuster about how much something should be or how much you should be reimbursed with it, do not put off signing that proof of loss. You can always come back with receipts. You can always come back with more information to provide to have a revision. But sometimes with those delays, if we do not have the proof of loss signed in time, we cannot move forward. So it's really important we have that information.
Great. Thank you so much. So Greg, from the auto insurance perspective, any major differences with filing auto claims, and what do we need to know about that?
Not really. I think the big key with all claims, whether it's auto or home or flood, is to file your claim as soon as reasonably possible. The problem with delaying and filing a claim is that damage could continue that might have been prevented. But beyond that, the insurer has a right to inspect that damage to determine the scope of the loss. And if you delay in filing the claim, then you prejudice the company when it comes to the handling of that claim, and they can deny the claim based on policy language for failure to file in a timely manner if they suggest or can support the fact that somehow what you did caused them further loss, and or they were unable to determine the actual scope of loss because of the delay in reporting the claim. So the biggest key is getting that claim filed as soon as possible. The other key, even with auto claims, take photographs. If your vehicle was damaged with a tree limb or it was damaged with flood, make sure that you get photographs of that. Now, flood damaged vehicles are pretty hard to hide. If your vehicle is damaged with a flood, particularly if it was saltwater inundation, it's not going to take very long for everybody to figure out that that vehicle is flood damaged. It'll start fogging the windows up inside, mold will start growing inside that vehicle. It's going to get pretty ugly pretty fast. So hopefully all of you who are watching this have already, if you've got a automobile claim, you've already filed that with your insurance company. There are not any specific timelines in law regarding the timeliness as far as the way they'll handle the claim. However, I can say that generally speaking, pretty quick about moving through that process. They're used to auto claims occurring. It's a regular occurrence everywhere in the country. Auto claims happen every day, and every company deals with probably thousands of them every day. So what I would suggest is that as you go through that process, if you run into a problem, I would encourage you to reach out to us, the Florida Department of Financial Services. We can help with the complaints process, and that there are links that are being provided with the webinar, but basically myfloridacfo.com/consumers will take you to the page where you can see those pieces of information. So I would encourage you to do that. We also offer a mediation program should the claims process not go as planned, where we could assist in getting a mediator who can sit down with you and the insurer and hopefully help to resolve that. But remember, with auto claims, and this is probably one of the biggest issues that we hear, that the amount of settlement on total loss claim is based on the value of the vehicle, not necessarily what you think that vehicle is worth. Sometimes we believe our vehicles are worth more than the market would suggest that they are worth, and the value of that vehicle has nothing to do with how much you owe on it. Those two are not related to one another.
For sure.
Great, all great advice. So across the board, are there duties on the policyholder side that the insurance company is expecting you to do after you sustain a loss?
Well, they do expect, the proof of loss situation, but also, again, they're going to want to have cooperation with you on and getting photos and getting a list of the damage and I would recommend getting with the adjuster as quickly as possible. That's your link to your claim. And you've got to have that there available. And they need to come out and see the property and see the damage. You've got to get that going right away because they expect that from you in your cooperation in dealing with that.
One of the other things that I shared there, I said that failure to file the claim in a timely manner can cause you to wind up in a situation where the claim is denied. Failure to cooperate with the company can also result in the denial of a claim. So both of those are your obligation as a policyholder after a claim. File the claim timely and cooperate with the insurance company and provide as much documentation of the loss as you can.
Completely agree with you, and it's across the board for NFIP claims as well. Being able to assist and work with the adjuster, and we are looking to assist you and help you through this process, as to make it as painless as possible.
Hey, Greg, I've got one thing I wanted to ask you. Our agency and our company uses, I think, the consumer hotline number 877-693-5236. Is that, I believe that's the consumer line number that homeowners can call if they're having an issue with their claim or their carrier or whatever. Is that the correct number? Because that was provided.
Yes, it spells out so easy for easy memory. My Florida CFO, my FL CFO is this.
Good, that's right.
And yes, that is the correct number. And that line is open from 8 to 4:30 daily during the weekdays for handling. You also can go on our website at myfloridacfo.com/consumers 24/7. There's some really good information on our website about your policies, coverages, claims process, et cetera. So there's a lot of good info there, but should you run into a problem, we're there to handle complaints and to assist you with that process.
Greg, I'm going to bounce back to you from a consumer services perspective. You see a lot of vendors come out after a storm. What should homeowners be aware of for dealing with contractors when they are trying to repair their damages after a storm?
Well, you need to be aware of this for all parties that you're going to interact with after a storm. There are good people out there and there are bad people out there at the end of the day. And there are people out there that want to help you with this process. And there are people out there who want to take advantage of you in this process. The important thing is to be cautious, to ask questions, to read, and to, when in doubt, don't do anything. I'll give you a quick example of a situation, and you'll understand my illustration here. Shortly after Idalia, we had a outdoor in what we call an insurance village in Taylor County, and we had a gentleman come into that village who had wind damage to his home, and in looking through what his situation was, he had already signed 5 different roofing contracts to repair the roof on his house, each of which had a 20% cancellation penalty. Had he not gotten there as quickly as he did and been within the rescission period of those contracts, he literally would have paid 100% of his claim to 5 different roofing contractors, when at most one of them could have fixed it, meaning he would have only gotten 20%. And there was more damage than just that. So the situations can be bad. People will take advantage of you. At the same time, there are really good people out there who are wanting to try to help you to resolve those claims. So make sure you deal with people that you trust, talk to people that you know that know these people, and interact with them and ask questions about the individuals. When it comes to handling a claim, you can hire outside parties to help you with that claims process. You can hire what's called a public adjuster. You can hire an attorney. But you're not required to do that. And one of the things that you need to know about that process is that they are there to advocate for you, but their advocacy costs you. In other words, if you're going to secure their services, you're going to pay for those services, and that payment will come as a portion of your claim. So you're going to give away a part of your claim in order for them to handle that. So unless you're concerned to begin with, I would suggest that, generally speaking, the best course of action is to allow the insurer to get that claims process started. And assuming everything goes well, then you're not necessarily going to need the services of those outside parties. If things don't go well, then you've got a lot of venues that you can reach out to. You can file a complaint with us. You can go through our mediation program. There's an appraisal clause in your contract you can invoke. You could also hire a public adjuster, or you could hire an attorney. So there's a lot of different pathways that you can go down to help settle the claim should you run into a problem. If you have questions about an adjuster that comes out, be it an independent adjuster, the company adjuster, or a public adjuster who's talking to you, don't sign anything unless you understand what you're signing, and make sure that that person is licensed. If you go to myfloridacfo.com, on our landing page, just below the header, there's a little button there that says verify agent adjuster license. Click on that, put their name in there. You can determine whether or not they're licensed. I'd also make sure that I always give you a card and verify that their license number is on it. If it's not, I would question doing business with them. Beyond that, if you're dealing with a building contractor, you can verify their license at www.myfloridalicense.com, which is the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. They're the state entity that regulates building contractors. And if you have a problem, their website, you can file a complaint there as well against the building contractor should that occur.
A lot of great information there, and we will be putting this information in the chat, but also sending out a full resource guide following the webinar with a link to the recording, so that way you can share with folks that may benefit from this information, or go ahead and rewatch that. I'm going to open this up to the whole panel. Something we've heard a lot about, especially in the past years, has been assignment of benefits, and there's been some changes with the laws recently surrounding that. Does anybody want to talk about what we need to know for assignment of benefits?
Well, I can certainly mention it from the carrier perspective. We had after two regular sessions and two special sessions dealing with insurance, a lot of insurance issues. The AOB assignment of benefits was really abused and is more unique to Florida, my understanding, than any other state, and that's been curtailed by legislation. So there can't be the situation where you transfer control of your claim to a third party. We often saw a $5,000 claim turn into $500,000. That was happening a lot. So that is part of the litigation situation in Florida that the legislature addressed this past session. Part of it was the assignment of benefits. So that's been curtailed, and that won't be as much abuse in that area.
Assignment of benefits, the challenge with that situation is that, as Barry mentioned, when you assign the benefits, you are assigning more than just what you thought you were assigning in many cases. And that's the reason the legislation was passed, because what we had seen in times past with regard to these kinds of contracts is that a contractor would come in, let's say it was a roofing contractor, because you had roof damage, but you had a whole lot of other damage to your home. And you sign this assignment of benefits with the roofer. Well, the terminology in that contract that you signed basically turned your entire claim over to them, even though they were only there to take care of the roof. And in many cases, we actually saw situations where they maybe repaired the roof and walked away with the entire claim. So that's one of the areas of abuse. As Barry indicated, there has been significant change in the assignment of benefits law. Those changes are in effect and would be in effect for Adelia. So hopefully we don't see those kinds of issues out there. If you run across an issue or you think you've got a problem, feel free to reach out to our office, myfloridacfo.com/consumers again, and we will take a look at whatever it is that you've got and see if we can't help you with that situation.
Fantastic. A lot of great information. We're going to jump to some of the questions from our attendees. Can FEMA help a homeowner with a claim if you have forced insurance by your mortgage company for both flood and homeowners?
So for your flood portion, you would just file a claim with that provider. The claim payment will include your lender because they are part of it, and it most likely does not include any of your contents. So but you can just file a claim because you do have insurance. It's just been forced on you. And so it's just that provided insurance.
Let me weigh in on this topic as well. Oftentimes with forced insurance, one of the things that people don't understand about a forced place insurance contract is that you are not the insured. Right. The bank or the mortgage company is the insured. So you don't have control over that policy. Oftentimes people will use that as an easy out because it seems the easier way to get coverage rather than shopping. But what you need to understand is that the coverage is limited to the amount of your outstanding loan. So if you own a $250,000 home and you have a $50,000 mortgage on it, you've got $50,000 worth of protection. They're not insuring the home for the replacement value of the home, and they're not insuring your equity in the home. They're only insuring the amount of the loan. And should you have damage that exceeds the amount of that loan payoff, it is very likely they're simply going to take those funds, pay off that mortgage, and that'll be the end of it. So you may be sitting there with a $250,000 home, in my example, with $100,000 worth of damage, and they're going to take the $50,000, pay off the mortgage, and that's the end of it because you're not going to get anything. So you're sitting here with a paid off $250,000 home, but it's got $100,000 worth of damage to it that is uncovered now. So it's important where you can to secure your own insurance. The forced place coverage will fill a void where the claim is small enough that is below the amount of the mortgage. That's where it steps in. But in those cases, you're going to contact your mortgage company. And as Ashley said, they're basically going to handle everything because they're the insured and they're going to make sure the money's going to be released to them. And then they're going to give you money as repairs are made to try to protect their investment in your property.
A lot of great information there. Thank you so much, Greg. Any other final notes from our panelists or any other trends that you're seeing or topics that you want to talk about currently with the market?
I would like to mention, and we talked about this briefly before we started, but there is an insurance crisis in Florida in property coverage for condominiums and single family homes. It's become a real, in my 37 years, I've never seen anything like it. Nothing to come close to what we're experiencing. And for the carriers, it's all about the wind and reinsurance and their ability to buy reinsurance, which is the coverage to protect their assets, so to speak. So it's protecting them to provide more coverage to expand and grow. And if they can't get that reinsurance, they're not going to be able to provide, coverage to our policyholders and our owners and residents in Florida. This past July is a major date for a major date for carriers to negotiate their reinsurance treaties. And we were pleasantly surprised that most of all the carriers were able to get it. So we got that done. The bad side of it is at about a 40% increase, which will be passed down to the policyholders in Florida. So got the reinsurance, but it's going to be more expensive. There's a few carriers that are falling out of playing in Florida, 5 or 6 now. And of course, there's a lot of emphasis on Citizens. That's our number one carrier right now for homeowners. Unfortunately, homeowners insurance is the Citizens property, the state, which is not necessarily a bad thing because they're capable of handling claims and paying. But that's got to be a short-term thing. We've got to get the private market back, and those are big concerns as we're moving forward to be able to provide insurance at a reasonable cost.
On the flood insurance side of that, I also really strongly encourage, I understand that flood insurance premiums are going up due to the new rating methodology being utilized called Risk Rating 2.0. It does show the increases in the premiums and there's a trend of deciding not to pay, especially if you own the property or there's no lender. And with Citizens being essentially the number one provider of homeowners insurance, that is meaning Citizens is requiring flood insurance as well In January 2024, they're going to be requiring flood insurance on properties that are in an X zone if they're valued at over $600,000. In 2025 at $500, 2026 at $400. So eventually there will be a situation where properties and citizens in an X zone or non-required are still going to be required to have flood insurance. So not losing their policy, losing any kind of glide path that you have. We don't want you in that situation. We definitely want you to maintain that policy so that you can keep that coverage there. And definitely talk to your agent about possible other options for insurance, because while the homeowners market may be lower, there is a larger market for private flood options that are out there.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I can't thank you and tell you how much this information is of value to our residents. And we appreciate you taking the time to support the webinar and join us today. For the residents that still need some assistance or have questions about their FEMA applications, FEMA has opened 2 disaster recovery centers to assist residents affected by Hurricane Idalia. That is at the center at Palm Harbor and the Enoch Davis Center, both open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. during the week. The DRCs serve as a centralized location where people can access various services and information related to disaster recovery. So you can get information and guidance, you can apply for assistance or check the status of your application. And there is access to computers and phones, translation and accessibility services. So please utilize that resource if you have the need for that. And again, we will be sending out a full resource guide with all the information and links to the topics that we were discussing today, and also a link to the video recording so you can share that with your family and friends that need it. Thank you so much to our panel, and thank you all for joining us today.